Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Oh, all right. Welcome again. Everybody's belly's full. You got a nice break, I hope. We appreciate you still being with us. And for those of you who have joined, welcome. Welcome to our one-year celebration. We're excited that you're here. So the panel that we have coming up right now, it's Now What? The Economic Impact of Building Innovation Communities. My name is Cynthia Macias. I'm the Senior Program Manager here at mHUB. Please, if you're still standing in the back, just feel free to come to the front. There's plenty of seats open. We like to, bring it in as much as possible. That way you can hear as well. So if you have questions during the panel, we do have a website where you can submit those questions that will be fed in real time to our moderator. So the link for it is right here. It's www.mhub, lowercase, .cnf.io. You can log in right now too, so you can start putting your questions in. We'll be moderating those questions, and then when the Q&A session of the panel starts, the moderator will answer those questions. Unlike the morning session, we won't be running the microphone out to people that raise their hands. So please, please, please feel free to include those questions into that website. Again, www.mhub.cnf.io, and if you can't see it, it's right there on the top. And also, please don't forget to use the hashtag. Earlier today, Haven announced that we were trending just behind Notorious B.I.G. I'm not sure why he's here, but that's pretty cool. So help us out-trend him by using the hashtag mHUB 1 year celebration on social. So help us out on that. So a little bit about me. I've been here with mHUB for over a year, which means that I've been working here since before we opened our doors last March. And just to be able to get to this point, to see all of you here celebrating with us, it's just a huge accomplishment. I have to say that it feels like yesterday, but it also feels like I've been here for 5 years, given the amount of growth and activity and just resilience and community that we've been able to build. So to me, it's very special to have you all supporting us and to celebrate here with us. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce two amazing mHUB members and community partners of ours, Shonali Ditz and Tierna Murrell of Spark Shops. They're going to do a quick intro about their organization. The focus is on youth and STEM education. So all of you out there that work with those the communities or students, keep an ear out for their amazing work. So Tierna and Shonali, please come on in and please give a round of applause.
Hi everyone, my name is Tierna Murrell. This is Shonali Ditz, and we're the co-directors of our nonprofit, which is called Spark Shop. So Shonali and I worked in the automotive and manufacturing industries when we graduated school. It's what we studied. And while we were out there, we kind of felt a need for more voices, more talent, more people pursuing technical fields, and especially more people with like a diversity in their skill set. This was so urgent that we quit our jobs to try to solve this problem. And everyone in this room knows that innovative companies are having a hard time hiring enough workers, and that's because there's a lack of qualified candidates.
So different schools and states have tried to address this issue with new standards that focus more on engineering in science. The word engineering shows up as early as kindergarten now in the standards, but this puts teachers in schools in a tough position of teaching something that they weren't trained in. And so what we've tried to do is really enter those schools and be that bridge.
So our mission is to inspire the next generation of innovators, engineers, and manufacturing geniuses. We do that by traveling directly to schools and classrooms and interfacing with students and teachers. So we run hands-on interdisciplinary lessons, and we're armed with revolutionary curriculum, custom teaching tools that we've developed, and like real engineering machinery, things that engineers use out in the field. So there are lots of schools out there that could never dream of building a makerspace of their own, and we bring one right to the classroom, so kids get a chance to interface with everything.
We designed Spark Shop to be entirely immersive and interdisciplinary with classes in engineering, manufacturing, and invention for 4th and 5th graders. We know that strikes a lot of people as incredibly young, but think about yourself when you were in 4th or 5th grade. These kids are about 9 or 10 years old, they're really open to new ideas, and they're still forming their ideas about what they are good at and what they're interested in, and we're able to change a lot of minds when we intervene at that age.
So we have a shared mission with mHUB, that's why we're here. We care a lot about connecting industry to schools, both of us. We really believe that lots of people would like engineering and manufacturing if they knew what it really was. It's hands-on, it's team-based, it's experiential, it's not just math and physics sitting at a desk. So we aim to bring that to students really young. mHUB is a great place to do that because we joined in October, and since then we've been bringing students here to learn right alongside real entrepreneurs that are building their businesses. Students get a chance to be here and see what their future could be if they decide to pursue that career path.
So for Tiernan and I personally, being at mHUB has been great for us because it means that when we're not in the classroom, we're also having our fingers sort of on the pulse of industry. And we get to see what's sort of on the forefront of innovation and technology and help to keep our program aligned to build students that are going to be leaders in the next movements of technology. Our students that we've worked with already, just over 200, are already really excited to build the next big thing and to start their own businesses. So we want you to keep an eye on the next generation of where our field really goes and think about where those leaders are right now. Thank you.
Give it a round of applause for Spark Shop. Thank you. We've been so happy to have you here too as partners and members. All right, so next we're going to introduce our panelists, our moderator, in our panel. So as I call your name, feel free to come onto the stage to join me. So our moderator is Andrea Hanis, is editor of Blue Sky Innovation, the Chicago Tribune vertical on innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology. Round of applause, please. Thank you. Our first panelist is Andy Zopp, is the president and CEO of World Business Chicago. Second panelist is Robert Weissbourd, is the founder of RW Ventures. Third panelist is Leslie McKinney, director of the Chicago chapter of Black Women in Science and Engineering. And last but not least is Juan Salgado, the chancellor of the City Colleges of Chicago. Thank you very much. Just make sure your lights and your microphones are in green, so you get on the left button. You just press the left gray button. All right, all microphones on? All right, good. Thank you very much.
All good. Well, welcome to mHUB. Thank you for joining us for this panel. We are going to be talking about a few different things today centered around, all of us are here, we're in this innovation space, or we're interested observers today, and we want to look at how that is translating to the rest of Chicago, both our economy overall and neighborhoods that may need more investment and attention. As mentioned, we have a great panel here that I think will be able to address this very well for us. So as you know, we have award-winning entrepreneurship initiatives. We have 1871. We're competing for big job prizes like Amazon HQ2. We have universities and tech hubs and venture capitalists. We have medical spaces. We have corporations. We have civic groups around innovation. And of course, we have media publications around innovation. But at the same time, sometimes it's hard to define the impact of all that work on the larger community, and it also can be a challenge to bring this type of programming and some of these benefits to the neighborhoods and the larger community in that way. So we'll be talking about those things today. I would like to give a quick nod to the Brookings Institution, who has an absolutely fabulous framework out there for evaluating innovation communities. Some of you may be familiar with this, but I would highly recommend that if you follow the space. And it really made an impact on what I was looking at as I pulled this together today. So I'm going to start with Andy, who is the CEO of World Business Chicago and has a perspective on both the big picture here and the neighborhood picture. So if you would start by laying out for us some of what your organization is doing, what's working, both in the big picture and regarding going into neighborhoods.
So thanks, Andrea. So first, I just want to make sure that we recognize that one of the things we've been doing at World Business Chicago for a while now through our Chicago Next program that I think all of you know is working to strengthen our tech ecosystem and make sure that we're connecting with places outside of the city to know that we have a strong tech community. And we've been rated as the #1 U.S. top tech spot for the future. We're the top 10 innovation hub rated by KPMG. We're the top 5 global fintech hub. We have more than 100 startup incubators and more than 300 corporate R&D centers here. So we have a thriving tech community here. What we're trying to do is to make sure that that community also is inclusive and making sure that we are creating pathways and opportunity to diverse entrepreneurs. At World Business Chicago, we do that through a number of ways. The most significant way related to the tech community is our Blackstone Inclusive Entrepreneurship Program, where we've identified 8 nonprofits that touch on diverse communities and are working to build programs to build better pipelines for those communities. It's working we're just started last July, so we haven't even finished the first year, but already our businesses in those communities are seeing that impact. And one of them, Blue 1647, has already used their participation in the Blackstone Challenge to turn around some additional investment dollars, which is our hope. So we're very focused that way, but we're also focused on neighborhood development writ large, which I think is an important platform for tech development as well. And so we're investing in supporting the work that the city is doing to bring businesses, to strengthen businesses at the neighborhood level, to strengthen some of our retail corridors in neighborhoods that have traditionally been underinvested in. And so I think those two things align very well in the work that we're continuing to do.
And Blackstone has an event coming up, I think, in April.
We do, May 16th. Make sure that everyone here gets an invitation to our Inclusive Entrepreneurship Summit, where we will be having some conversations around what inclusive entrepreneurship looks like, how do we continue to grow that ecosystem, and also building a platform for the nonprofits that are participating in our programs to get them in front of foundations and other funders to help elevate their ability to generate and leverage capital.
Thank you. Bob, I'm going to ask you a question that I know you'll be happy to answer, which is, since we're at mHUB, why manufacturing? Why is manufacturing such an important part on both ends of both the big picture financially and the neighborhood development?
Thank you, and I'm glad to be here. I want to first compliment what World Business Chicago has turned to and what they're doing and what mHUB is doing, because I think what I'm about to say is the platform from which a lot of that evolves and what makes it so important. So first of all, before we get to manufacturing, Chicago has the 3rd largest economy, Chicagoland, in the country, measured by outputs and by jobs. It has the 7th largest by average wages. When you look over the last 15 years at our growth, we're 75th, 6th, and 8th in those 3 measures. So we have a giant economy that's underperforming. And we're making a huge turn because of the work Andrea described and mHUB is doing. Manufacturing is about 15% of that economy, but it has way more effect. Manufacturing has about a 2.2 multiplier effect. Its supply chains, et cetera, drive a lot of additional economic impact. 70% of R&D happens in manufacturing, 90% of patents. So manufacturing is a traded sector that drives the rest of your economy. So manufacturing is critically important. We're also lagging slightly in our manufacturing performance. Over the last 15 years, manufacturing productivity has gone up about 30%, in Chicago like 7%. And so there's a lot of ways to cut these numbers, but we have huge assets and huge opportunity, and we're underperforming in it. And we're underperforming primarily because we've been resting on our laurels. I do a lot of work in food manufacturing, that industry. I've worked in metals, in different sectors, and we have great assets, and we're starting to make the turn, but the manufacturing community and the nature of manufacturing in this economy is shifting toward smaller, toward niche, toward collaborative, toward things more amenable to neighborhoods we'll be talking about. And Chicago, because of activities like this in the startup culture we've started to generate, is playing catch up with respect to restructuring our manufacturing and increasing our productivity.
And say one more minute about why that is. Were we reliant on bigger companies?
I think I see this, and you mentioned Brookings. I'm affiliated with Brookings, so I've worked in a lot of cities with Brookings. I see this particularly in places that were highly successful in the industrial economy, that had, if you forgive the expression, kind of old boy networks, very strong kind of backroom capacity to drive deals through big companies. But we're kind of closed. We're a city that I don't want nobody that nobody sent. So if you're an entrepreneur, 10 years ago you didn't come to Chicago because it was hard to break in. I mean, that's really changing. But it's a lot of different things. In different industries, there's just different technologies, different adaptation. And we need a way to drive more product innovation in manufacturing. And that's exactly what mHUB's doing.
Yeah, this may be more an observation than a question, so forgive me, but it does seem like even in my career of covering business and watching the business world, it was dominated by big companies, the global corporate citizens of Chicago and their CEOs, and they were very locally motivated and very locally engaged, and companies have become much more global, right? And now we've got this thriving world of young companies, which is great, but those individual companies can't do what a large company's CEO can do for the city, right? So it's like organizations like this seem to bring things together and put some weight behind those smaller efforts.
So if I agree with that. If I could offer just one more anecdote, I may want to get to other people, and a little bit out of school maybe, but among friends, right? 5 or 6 years ago, when World Business Chicago was doing its plan for economic growth and jobs, during the market research around innovation, we held a roundtable of about 25 leading people in innovation, both big and little. And I won't name names, but one of the people running an energy innovation entrepreneurship thing turned to Glenn Tilton, who was the head of United and World Business, one of the co-chairs of this effort, and said, "You all are dinosaurs, right? We're the entrepreneurs. The old companies are dinosaurs." And it's not, if you can't connect your existing base with your entrepreneurship, neither are going to succeed as well as they need to. We started on a path that was disconnecting those. I think places like mHUB are starting to reconnect them. Because the big companies, it was in the headlines yesterday in food, the big companies are turning around and saying we want to get engaged in the innovation ecosystem, and the small companies, because they're not investing as much internally in their R&D. So we have to connect our existing manufacturing in this startup culture we've developed.
So Leslie, let me segue to your world, which kind of combines the two, right? You help look at women who have certain types of careers, and you help those careers pivot. Is that right?
Well, that's our goal. So we're a newer organization. The chapter here in Chicago is about 1.5 years old. We look at women who have graduated with STEM degrees. They're mid to senior level women. And yes, we try to help them get unstuck. Because at some point, everyone, to some degree, well, not everyone, but a lot of us get stuck somewhere and feel that we should be further along, and what can we do to make that happen? So Black Women in Science and Engineering, which is also known as BWISE, our goal is to help introduce, and in some cases try to partner with other people to train women to be able to pivot into newer areas of innovation, 3D printing, blockchain, data analytics. So the thought is, if you graduate in STEM, and even though you may be a manager and got an MBA, that maybe you're not too far off of wanting to continue your career until you're ready to retire in one of these areas that is growing. So let's get the training and let's move on.
Yeah, and that's, I think, interesting because you're seeing people at maybe a little bit older of an age level that want to be part of this community. And I think when we talk about diversity, we don't always think about age as the biggest part of it, but that is a challenge in this world, right? To help people mid-career, senior career also benefit from this digital economy.
Yes, and we have to show, and we are, people who want to continue to learn. So a lot of us, when we get to a certain age, think we have our credentials, we've got our degrees, and we don't need to do anything else. Well, when you find yourself in a position where jobs are moving out of the country, maybe you need to start rethinking that and show that you can take on more learning and get more certifications. I mean, now there's all kind of different ways to be a part of this, without always having to go and get another 4-year degree or a master's degree. So let's be a part of it.
So this is a nice segue to Juan as well, who obviously is preparing students for this type of job. Tell me how City Colleges has changed what it's doing, its outreach, its programs, which I know are evolving in this direction also.
So we are the community college system for the city of Chicago. We have 7 independent colleges that collectively enroll over 80,000 students. Those students primarily come from every nook and cranny in our city. And we've organized ourselves in a way that really focuses on in-demand careers. So areas of information technology, business and finance, healthcare, transportation, distribution, logistics, in areas of culinary and hospitality, and also in engineering and advanced manufacturing. We are actually in the midst of a major wing that is being constructed at Richard J. Daley College, which is our Center for Excellence in Engineering and Advanced Manufacturing. $45 million investment. The opportunity to, have the up-to-date equipment and capabilities, the maker spaces, the robotics, the CNC programming, all of the kinds of things you would want to have for today's manufacturing, a very clean facility that is going to increase our capacity 4 to 5 times from what we have right now, which, as everyone in this room knows, is sorely needed, right? But it doesn't just increase our capacity to serve students in our campus, it increases our capacity to reach out into public schools and ensure that those 4th and 5th graders have access to facilities like ours so that they can begin to see what's possible for them in the future. And when you think about the role of two-year colleges, I think it's really important to understand that we're like mHUB in some ways. We're a connecting institution. We connect to our public school system. We connect directly to employers, certification programs. We're now doing a lot of boot camps. We're starting to do, short, more intensive, ensuring that, you don't have to even get to a certification course to already get into the industry. We're doing that, for instance, in cybersecurity. But we also have stackable credentials so that you can get a certification, you can build upon that and get an associate's degree. You can go on. We have in engineering transfer agreements with IIT. We have a guaranteed admissions agreement with the University of Illinois system, including Champaign-Urbana. So student can come into City College of Chicago and just has to meet the course requirements and the grade requirements, and you're sitting over there at the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana or IIT or Purdue or any number of universities. And so, we are sort of that doorway, to economic opportunity, and particularly for, lower and middle income families for who, higher education is going to be difficult for them to afford. We have to understand, we have a tuition, full-time tuition, $1,753, right? So, and we're living in a time where, that's a lot of money for working families. And so we're that open access institution and working directly with employers and looking forward to working with more of the employers like the ones we have here in mHUB. I think we can play a role in their growth strategies, right, in terms of their workforce growth strategies.
So are students coming to you interested in the right things, one, and are they leaving you able to get jobs in those things? How well are we doing on both sides of when they come to you and when they leave you?
Yeah, that's actually where we've had the most progress as an institution. Years past, we tried at every college to be all things to all people. And by focusing our college's resources on an industry, we've been able to learn from the industry. We've been able to ask them to review our curriculum, create work-based learning opportunities that actually lead to income generation and job attainment. And so when you think about city colleges, our end goal is labor force attachment and labor force growth. So, go to Malcolm X College, where we made a $250 million investment in a new state-of-the-art facility, and you have pass rates over 95% in almost every program. Where they're not 95%, they're 100%. And where we couldn't before actually get in the pipeline at employers like Rush University, we now have a direct pipeline into that industry. And that's true now for manufacturing, but because of the investment, we will be able to make that even more relevant. Right now, our facilities, if you go to Daley College today, we're in a quadrant hut, it's like 30, 40 years old. And so this facility will really modernize us to the point where we can deliver that value directly to more employers.
So can
please,
I
yes,
just
please.
want to comment on two things that Juan said that I think are critically important to, as we're thinking about how we grow the economy here in Chicago, but also the tech community. First and foremost, as we talk to employers and companies that are trying to come here, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Google, whether it's Aspen Dental or ServiceNow, their number one thing that they're concerned about is access to talent. Consistent access to talent. You heard Spark Up come in and say that's what they're trying to address even at the 4th grade level. So the pivot in city colleges to demand-driven education that works with employers to address what they're doing is a huge plus for us when we're trying to recruit companies here because they are building a pipeline of talent. The other thing companies care about, particularly in the tech world, is being able to have diverse talent. They're really interested in a pipeline of talent that looks like the world. And again, one of the things that City Colleges is doing is building that pipeline of affordable education for our city's students, who are largely diverse. And so that work is, the investments that we've made in city colleges is not only just important to the city as a whole and our young people, but it is important to making sure that Chicago stays competitive, and we view it as a huge competitive advantage when we're talking to companies about why they want to come here.
And is that where it should be, Andy, or do you feel like what areas are working there, what needs to still be done?
Well, I think Juan, Mayor's been, a lot of this pivot that he's talking about has just happened. So we're working on Daly College, then we're making that investment. We're just at the beginning. It would be nicer if we were a little further down the pipeline, but I think we are absolutely headed in the right direction. And if you're thinking about longer term, right, not just who your employees are today, but are you going to be able to build that pipeline of talent? I think we're right where we need to be.
And I'd just point out, we also have a 100,000 square foot facility for transportation, distribution, and logistics, which is again underway at Olive Harvey College. And having that kind of vision, is really helpful when you're going to Amazon and saying, we would like for you to locate here in Chicago. And so we're very pleased that we've made this pivot because it goes directly to the pocketbooks of working families.
Can I just add to this a couple points that reinforce it? One is that nationally we expect to have 3.5 million job openings in manufacturing. And 700,000 or so of those are new jobs, right? People think manufacturing's shrinking and it's getting more efficient, but its outputs are growing. We expect 700,000 new jobs, but it's an aging workforce. We expect 2.5 million retirees in manufacturing. Remember, Chicago is the second biggest center of manufacturing by employment. So we need to replace that manufacturing workforce. And it's a huge opportunity for inclusion because there is a push for and need for diversity. The other thing about this is that these are well-paying jobs. This is not our father's manufacturing. These are cleaner plants. They're smaller. They're more fun. And wander around mHUB. Manufacturing feels different and pays better. So that this is an attractive place to be, and we have to kind of change the image of manufacturing and build the pipelines people are talking about. So,
and I just wanted to talk about why that becomes important. So many of you may have heard that we've lost population in Chicago, and we've lost particularly populations in the African American community. And a lot of that is middle class families. So when you're looking at neighborhood development and you're making investments in neighborhoods, if we don't rebuild the middle class, the access to the middle class, you can create jobs, but if you're only creating minimum wage jobs, it's very hard to rebuild the community, right? Because families are still struggling. What we're trying to do is create pathways to jobs where people don't have to have 2 or 3 jobs just to support their family. Manufacturing jobs are a pathway to that, and so this becomes a critical part of really overall neighborhood development. One of the exciting investments that the city participated in last year was the opening of a robotics and advanced manufacturing facility, training facility in the Washington Heights neighborhood on the south side, just on the campus of Chicago State. It's run by Dr. Brazier's Woodlawn organization. They train individuals in advanced manufacturing, and they're producing product in the facility. It's those kinds of connections because we're bringing access to good-paying jobs on which people can, by the way, build a career, not just have episodic employment.
But I also think this is an opportunity for organizations similar to BWISE to be able to step in while you know, you have the high school students or the college students still getting their education and training. You have people who've already worked in industry, understand operations. We have lots of people who've been in manufacturing before, believe it or not. And you can step in and help in those areas while you're waiting for the next generation to be trained.
So, and what do you see in the neighborhoods? We talked a little bit about this before off stage. When you mentioned wearing an mHUB t-shirt on the South Side, right? What happens when you do that? You mentioned, you know, a Chicago Innovation Awards billboard, maybe in a neighborhood where people don't participate in those things as much. How do these organizations that many of us are a part of, that maybe in and around downtown, and to us they're famous, but how do they become famous? You know, how do people know I should reach out to mHUB? Or if I'm a teacher in a school on the South Side, how do I know maybe I should reach out to mHUB? Or maybe I should have, you know, just creating that connective tissue.
What I started doing, because I'm a mentor here at mHUB as well, so I have mHUB t-shirts, and sometimes I wear them when I go like line dancing or someplace else, just so it has...
Can we see a demo here?
No, thanks. But just so, you know, people can kind of question, what is that? And sometimes I don't wait for them to question, I mention it to them and try to explain what mHUB is. And try to explain that, you know, this is an opportunity if you're interested in doing physical product, that you don't have to worry so much about access to capital and trying to raise it, and it's a lot of money to do that, right? You should prototype first and then try the hard tool, and if it doesn't work, then what? So here's your access to something where you can actually prototype a physical product, and depending on what it is, you can potentially create prototypes or even do short runs. So you can, when you're at home tinkering and thinking about, this is something I can make, well, here's a place where you can do it. So I try to talk about it, but it does need to be talked about more. And we definitely need to bring more visibility to areas. It even, like Polsky Center being at University of Chicago, we need to have the conversations beyond 67th Street and west of the United Center.
Yeah, because it's getting the word out, and then it's also getting people feel like it's for them and that they can use it, or that they have an understandable way to use it, right?
Let me build on that and add another neighborhood impact. So one is the entrepreneurship opportunity and small business opportunity. The businesses and a lot of our manufacturing are located in the neighborhoods historically, even neighborhoods that have changed around, and they need to be reconnected to advanced manufacturing. It's expected that 1,500 to 2,000 local manufacturers will sell in the next 10 years. So there's a big succession opportunity for sophisticated entrepreneurs or existing businesses. The other, though, I want to add is industrial real estate. We have a lot of industrial real estate in our neighborhoods that is underutilized. This is true around the country. So you have the Cleveland Opportunity Corridor, you have the Atlanta Beltway, you have New Orleans, Detroit, you know, the Brooklyn Naval Yards, Pittsburgh. Lots of places are discovering, as manufacturing becomes more consistent with neighborhood and mixed uses, they're creating innovation districts, they're creating various kinds of shared MBE parks, B2B parks, hospital supplier parks. And we're seeing the big project in the south suburbs now looking at this. We've seen this with the planned manufacturing districts here. You could talk better about that. But so the other opportunity for the neighborhoods is to bring more jobs into the neighborhoods and redevelop some of this abandoned real estate.
I think it's really also important to utilize mHUB as a way to demystify, you know, what this really means. So when you think about what we're planning to do at Daly in partnership with mHUB is to bring our students through, right? You know, it's one thing to go to a big company that's already established. It's another thing to come and see something on the ground floor that's being created. And for you to be able to see and visualize, plant a seed, right, for the future. You can visualize yourself in this space innovating, and that creates just a whole new set of possibilities that, quite frankly, some of our students might not have right now, right? And not just them, but thinking about digging deeper into, you know, younger students that are in high school, so that the earlier that seed gets planted, you know, the more it's present throughout their journey, and they in the future might wind up here at mHUB.
So when we think about these issues, how do we measure success? What does a successful Chicago look like in 5 years, 10 years? It's different job opportunities for people, it's a stronger tax base, it's better jobs. What are some of the factors that we're looking at?
Well, so I think first as I think Bob talked about, it's addressing some of helping that we have more manufacturers tied to advanced manufacturing techniques and helping to create jobs. So we've been adding jobs on a regular basis, both in the city, but also, and this is the piece that I think for us is most important, that we're starting now to see job growth at the neighborhood level. So I think we want to continue to do that. We'd like to see income levels rise, particularly in some of our more challenged neighborhoods. Home values are rising, that's great, but if income levels don't rise, people will be displaced. And so we need to, and that will happen as more people get connected to better wage paying jobs.
So people in economic development in my field argue about whether job growth comes mostly from entrepreneurship or attraction or existing companies. And I think the weight of the data, I'm going to say two slightly conflicting things, is that it comes mostly from growing your existing companies, scale-ups, secondly from entrepreneurship, third from attraction. But the right answer is that it's wrong to think of them as separate, right? You are better at attracting if you have a base and you're investing in your existing companies. If you attract, you support your base. Your entrepreneurs have to be connected to existing companies and attraction. So these three kind of iterate and reinforce each other. Success will ultimately, the ultimate measure of success, there's more than one, right? But first, from my point of view, is economic growth. So it's our gross regional product. If we attract and we grow more companies, we'll expand our output. That will translate into incomes and wealth for our residents. That will translate into vital communities and better amenities and all kinds of other things. And we talk about inclusive growth not as two things, not let's do growth and then figure out inclusion, but as one. We have to drive this growth through participation and ownership of the assets that have been left out. Because one of our biggest problems in Chicago is that some places are succeeding and some failing, and it's not a sustainable growth model. We're wasting all these assets in underemployed people, in underinvested firms, and underdeveloped real estate that are both a waste of assets if we want to grow our economy and a drag because they incur costs of poverty. So we have to, success will be growing inclusively.
And for me, seeing numbers are great, but I get more from visuals. So as I drive through the neighborhoods, if I see change happening, it's a better indicator for me. I've seen growth in places like Bronzeville. I've seen growth in places like Pullman. So it's great to see those things happening. So you just need to continue on, and that'll be fantastic.
Yes, say another minute about Pullman, because I know that's something you view as a high point, and many do, and a place that's starting to get it right.
Yeah, so in Pullman, they have Method Products is there, and Method in general just seems to be a great company in terms of their culture and their vision, and they do a lot when it comes to the ecology. So they have bought up space there, and part of that space is there to never be developed, to be a green space. They have a wind turbine that you can see off of I-94, which is kind of crazy. And then they have solar trees and everything else. So they're trying to do their best to, when it comes to energy, and then have jobs there on the south side, which is fantastic. And right behind it, you have Whole Foods distribution center just moved in there. And actually, there's other companies. There's Kellogg's there and a few other places. And you can see that there's more coming to Pullman. So it's exciting to see.
In our case, if the manufacturing center that we're developing will give us capacity to train 1,000 people a year. And we have, in about a 5 to 10 mile radius from that particular college, about 10,000 openings, whether they're replacement workers or new workers, right? And so from my vantage point, we're going to see that transformation of communities when we're able to get every one of those 1,000 new trained workers an opportunity to get a living wage job that can help them to buy a home, send their kid to college, shop at the local grocery store, and create the middle class vibrancy that Andy talked about earlier, right? It really comes down, the rubber hits the road where the worker gets trained and gains the skills and gains the job and gains the income for their families.
Were you about to jump in?
I was just going to add on Pullman because I think it's a great example. You got Chicago Neighborhood Institute, David Doy. You got a good developer. You got the city partnering. It's a classic example of a lot of vacant real estate, good infrastructure for development. Someone needed to step up and figure out what's the right thing to do there. And we have 25 other sites in Chicago like this. They're communities. We have 50 actually, but each of them needs their own thing. They're not all going to be manufacturing sites, but Pullman was a really smart place to locate a particular combination of manufacturing and retail and mixed use. We're just finally getting our first sit-down restaurant in Pullman along the strip, the retail strip outside there. And each neighborhood or area has different opportunities like this. And it's very important to connect, this is my earlier point, maybe not put as clearly, to connect the entrepreneurship work, the training work, the real estate development work, the neighborhood work. These dots all have to reinforce each other and be tailored to different places.
I want to double back for a minute on the big companies and how well they're doing. I might put that on you, Andy, since you might have the best scope on that. How are sort of big corporate citizens doing with helping us out in this digital economy push? I know many of them are involved in the tech hubs. They are able to do big things, right? Big internship programs or give big amounts of money to things or big, how is that playing out? What are they doing well? What could be better about how they either partner with companies or how they are helping in other ways?
Well, I think what we're seeing is something that Bob touched on in his remarks. If you look at any of our major tech hubs, whether it's mHUB, whether it's DMDI, whether it's Matter, whether it's 1871, there are the hatchery that's going to open in Humboldt Park. There are deep corporate partners, and I think what we're seeing is they're changing their approach to R&D from, instead of kind of in-house, whole house, recognizing that there's a tremendous amount of innovation happening outside of their shops and really recognizing that they can move. And the other thing is that innovation, and you all know this, it's moving incredibly quickly. And it's very hard to keep up with that in your shop, right? So if you're out in a variety of spaces looking at what's happening on a variety of levels, and they're also supporting our higher institutions of higher education as well and their research. And I think what they're finding is in order to be competitive, not only nationally but globally, they've got to open up their sourcing for innovation because it's moving so quickly. And in our experience, they're doing it well. There's, of course, always more opportunity. But I would also say that here in Chicago, again, something that I think helps us to be competitive is we have a lot of outlets for it. So if you want a company, you want to partner, we have a lot of places and a lot of models where you can do that. And that's a real draw.
So we think capitalism basically is what's motivating them, right? They're not doing it because they want to be nice or they want to, be their corporate good selves, but they're going, look, we need your talent. We want to acquire you. We want to, buy you out so we have your innovations. We want, right? It's based on that.
I think in general, business moves by what's good for the business. I think there is a recognition that talent is important, access to a broader source of innovation is important. I do think the best companies are also recognizing that diverse talent is better for their organization. But I don't know a business that is only doing it because it's the right thing to do. I think they do right things because that's bad for their company and for their employees. Most businesses, particularly those as the millennials continue to take over and be a larger part of their population, they care very much, and that matters as well.
I think, Bob, I want to jump in here because it piggybacks importantly on this. Aon and Accenture, two global companies, made a decision to do something they've never done before, which is to look at city colleges and our graduates as a potential part of their pipeline. And so, here they did give it a shot to these students that were in our system. And what they discovered, hungry, hardworking, talented students in an apprenticeship initiative that really added tremendous value to their work environment. This was not about charity at all. It was not about the corporate contribution side of the house. It was about these students can provide real value. And now they've created an apprenticeship network. They're going out to every company they can to say, this is the way to go. Not necessarily because because it's good for their bottom line, right? And because it's good for their environment. And by the way, that's, for us, the best way to go, because we know then that those doors are sustainable doors that are going to be open well into the future. And we also know that our talent was always very capable, continues to be very capable to be in those environments. And so I think there's sort of a shift, too, in the corporate community to understanding that there's real value when they invest real dollars that's part of their overall business strategy into talent from local communities.
So I just really want to reinforce this. So first of all, I think we're right at the front end of a really important sea change in the business community, because I think 10 years ago, I think, first of all, we should expect the business community to act in their self-interest. And we shouldn't ask differently, right? They're businesses. 10 years ago, the play was disruptive economy. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to compete on low cost. I'm going to outsource my labor. I'm not going to invest in innovation. I'm going to wait and see. Now, we're seeing nationally business leaders say, we have the U.S. Chamber of Commerce saying you need to invest in your employees like your supply chain management before they get here and throughout. You know, you have big businesses saying, we need to invest in quality growth and think long-term and stop doing the short-termism. So we have an opportunity at this moment. The other thing is in manufacturing, the structure of manufacturing is changing. So the line between manufacturing and non-manufacturing is blurring. So if you think about manufacturing supply chains, you think about the amount that's spent in R&D, that's spent in various kinds of value chain realization in product service, in software. So, you know, the manufacturers increasingly, particularly, have to think of their businesses and their business relationships more broadly. So this is a moment of opportunity where businesses are shifting their view and their willingness to invest in their inputs, in effect, in their neighborhoods. And we're right at the right place to take advantage of that, I think.
Yeah, excellent. I think we are starting to get some questions from the audience, so we're going to be happy to take those. Okay, here we go. Love the system. Sometimes it may be obvious who the question's for. If not, just give me a nod and I'll jump you in. So number one, I think, is going to Juan here. How do city colleges keep their curriculum in sync with the real needs of businesses that are hiring?
So we now have a system where we engage businesses in the ongoing review of our curriculum, in the ongoing review of our facilities. One of the reasons why we're making these investments is that we understood in that conversation with businesses that the new environment in manufacturing is not the environment in which we were teaching our courses.
So specifically, what kind of feedback do you get? I'd be curious to know, like, what's an example of something that...
We have no robotics equipment in our current facility, right? The other feedback is we were going to build a facility that was an advanced manufacturing facility. We now have included engineering and advanced manufacturing co-located so that both disciplines are within the same building, and students aspiring to go on to engineering programs are right next to students aspiring to operate a machine, and the value that they learn in that interaction while they're in class is the same kind of value that they're going to need to learn from a soft skills standpoint and team and collaboration standpoint as they go on into the workplace. And so we're getting, again, day-to-day feedback. There's intersections between plastics manufacturing and metalworking, and so wherever there are intersections, we get to learn about those so that we can incorporate that into our everyday curriculum, and that moves very quickly. And so if we don't, we have them at the table, and so we're able to pivot much quicker than we did in the past.
One for Bob. What do you think the impact of corporations scrapping R&D departments in favor of acquisitions will have on innovative ideas?
One of the risks of a panel is that you kind of talk in short sound bites and simplify. So I wouldn't want to say corporations are scrapping R&D. I mean, there's a lot of big corporate R&D going on. I just think they're realizing that not all innovation is going to happen in-house or should, Right? If you think of the real estate, I mean, the model of a corporate campus 20 years ago was go way out in the suburbs and put a big fence and a lake around it. Don't let anyone see your intellectual property. And the model of innovation now is you have to cross-fertilize. You're across so many disciplines and activities in your supply chain that you got to have hackathons at mHUB. So it's not that you're not doing R&D, it's just you're opening it up and engaging more people. I think corporations that just don't do any in-house R&D are going to hurt. But opening it up, I think, makes a lot of sense.
Here's one for Andy. What can we learn from the industrial age disinvestment from the 1980s and since to build a more diversified economy going forward?
So, what we can learn is that we have significant parts of our city that are trailing in growth in significant ways. So we have two parts of the city. Cities that are thriving organically, and parts of the city that are not, and where poverty has, and then that just like economic development builds on it when you leverage it, so does disinvestment. So when jobs leave and amenities leave, people leave. And then it's very hard to recover. So what we can learn from that is that as we're rebuilding, this is why we talked earlier about how critically important it is to rebuild pathways to good paying jobs. Because if we don't rebuild some wealth or access to economic opportunity in the neighborhoods, it's very hard. You can put amenities there, but if people, we've got a Whole Foods in Inglewood now. It's thriving. That development is thriving, but we've got to build a neighborhood that will attract families, because otherwise the Whole Foods won't be there in 2 years. And so that's what we've learned, that you can't, that it builds on each other and it leverages, and you can disinvest it away or you can build on it, which is what we're trying to do.
Challenging one for anyone who wants to take it. Is it smart to make a bet on manufacturing to create economic equality when a lot of that work is ripe for automation? Automation. It's ripe for automation. Is it smart to bet on manufacturing if the robots are coming? I think is more or less the question. Did everyone see Flippy, the hamburger story this week? There was a new robot that flips hamburgers. There was kind of a funny ending to it. I'm buying everyone a moment of time to think of an answer to this one. So Flippy had to take a few days off because so many people descended upon this hamburger store that they kind of burned Flippy out. So Flippy had to take a few mental health days this week. It was one of those funny, the robots are coming, but maybe not quite, kind of stories. Yeah. So, is it smart to bet on manufacturing, or is it not really worth it if the robots are coming?
Let me do high level, and then you do the kind of accurate detail. So there's a national debate going on about the future of work. This happened in the first industrial revolution. The Luddites said there's not going to be any work anymore. We're having the second industrial revolution. There's a set of people who think we're going to drop to a 30 or 20-hour work week and all go back to universities or quality of life or other kinds of focus. I think most people, particularly in the short or even medium run, think historically has shown that new work emerges. Someone makes the robots and services them, or you get a new leisure industry because we're working 30 hours a week instead of 40. So it means you have to be really nimble, and we need different systems to make the labor market work efficiently, which is, I think, what you've been focused on. But I don't think we need to worry that work is going to disappear on us.
I just want to add that we have a lesson learned here in this city, because I think we were asking that question several years ago, and we, in some respects, disinvested in manufacturing. We paid a lot less attention to it, right? We thought, geez, we're losing lots of jobs. Let's focus on other industries. And, I think when our Mayor Manuel came in and they put together a plan for economic growth in Chicago, manufacturing became center stage, at the front of the page. And so I think we should learn from that, right? This is an industry that we will want to stay engaged in, right? And yes, there will be trends that we will need to keep up with, right, at every level. And yes, there will be benefits from keeping up with those trends, but we should not do what we did in the past.
So next upvoted question comes up right out of that. What role do we see city, state, and federal government having in influencing innovation and economic growth, and how can they improve? we've touched on some of that probably because some of you are a little bit government adjacent and things that you're talking about. But what is the proper role for government here, and what can they do to help?
Let me just start and buy you all time. So the classic economic answer to that, a key one is investing in early stage R&D, right? The private sector cannot capture all the externalities of its R&D investment, so it underinvests. And there's a role for the public sector, a key role, in both investing directly and in giving tax credits for R&D and enabling the kind of innovation that's happening here. Because the very early stage stuff is costly and the returns don't pay for itself. So that's one key role. There's a lot, but that's one key role.
Obviously, there's a critical role in the world of workforce, right? Not every manufacturer, particularly small manufacturers, are going to have the wherewithal to, invest in the capabilities to fully train their workforce. And so institutions like ours can play a big role in advancing a prepared workforce.
And the last piece would be really making sure that we're thinking through policies that are not hostile to innovation. We have to be really careful about that. We see, and we've seen some reactionary laws submitted because of people are reacting to the potential for innovation, and that can slow it down and be and not helpful. So I think we have to be sensitive to that in government.
An issue that's big other places that I think isn't jumping to mind here because we're pretty good at it, both city and county, is the infrastructure. You got to assemble land, you got to clean it, you got to create the right rails and roads and virtual infrastructure, and that's a key factor in manufacturing location and success that we're pretty good at, I think.
Yeah. One for anyone, which is a corollary, which is what are the role of nonprofits? How do they contribute to economic development in South and West Side communities? Do they need to partner with for-profits? Do some of these need to change their models? How do not-for-profits fit in?
Well, I think they can fit in a number of ways, particularly as we're looking at creating opportunity for people who may not have the skills, for businesses that don't have the experience. So I think there's roles for not-for-profits both in the workforce training area and helping to work with to increase skills and advance skills. There's opportunities for them, particularly with small businesses that have good ideas, but don't know how to access innovation well and don't know how to access capital well.
I think about not-for-profits too as sort of the innovators. Often some of the best ideas, for big public institutions like ours come from not-for-profits. Andy mentioned the work that Dr. Byron Bazier's doing with BSD Industries and robotics training. He was the innovator. We joined in on that. Those students are actually City College of Chicago students as well that are getting credentials of economic value tied to what they're doing. So I think we should look at them as innovators.
And I also think about non-for-profits in this space too, because Black Women in Science and Engineering is a not-for-profit, and we're trying to help women get the training that they need so they can stay relevant in the workplace. But then you also have other not-for-profits like Buffalo New Life that are doing things on the west side to get people trained when it comes to manufacturing. So there is definitely a place for not-for-profits when it comes to having people go into the workforce and then work for a profit industry.
Okay, we have time for one more. So I will do a manufacturing specific one. What are your thoughts on how we can use manufacturing to uplift our most challenged neighborhoods, i.e. Austin and Englewood and the like, let's say?
So I think Bob touched on it earlier in his remarks, which is, and we're working to do this, which is to, and really twofold. One is to try and recruit, to do more development and to recruit manufacturing companies to come there and create jobs. But the other is to try and look at some of these succession issues for businesses that are currently going to have leadership that's aging out and figure out how we can open up pathways to ownership in some of these neighborhoods and communities.
And how important is it that the businesses be located in those communities versus maybe providing transportation, childcare, other things that maybe get people to be able to do those jobs regardless of exactly where they're located?
Sure, they don't have to be located in those areas, but let's keep in mind when you're dealing with communities that have had a history of poverty, that when you add on another barrier, which is now you have to get to the job. Well, what if you don't have a car? What if you don't have access to the train? So it just adds a layer of complication that is easier if you can, if the business is closer in the community. It also helps build other economic activity in the community because you have jobs there and you have people who have to go to lunch, they have to go to the cleaners, they need to go to the pharmacy, and so it's a backbone of a economic ecosystem. So it's not required, but it helps.
So let me just distinguish two types of impact. One is impact because you create wealth for residents who get employment outside the community or businesses who plug into supply chains. The other is impact because you grow businesses in the community or around it. And not every neighborhood needs to have manufacturing or is well suited for it. And Englewood and Austin are very differently situated. Austin is surrounded by manufacturing corridors. It's got hundreds of metals job shops that are really ripe for a shared facility to upgrade their technologies and their product development. They're perfect. And so Austin has a huge manufacturing play. I'm not saying Englewood doesn't, but it's a matter of infrastructure and access. And historically, Englewood was more of a bedroom community and a commercial, not industrial community. But there's opportunities in both, probably.
And even if you talk manufacturing, there's more than just the laborers that will be on the manufacturing floor. There is a whole infrastructure that supports manufacturing, supply chain, buyers, manufacturing engineers, electrical engineers, inspectors, safety engineers. So there's a whole infrastructure that goes around that too, not just looking at people who will specifically be doing the actual assembly or the work on the floor. And honestly, living on the South Side, if I only had to travel to Englewood to go work, I'd do it. I wouldn't have to necessarily live in the neighborhood for me to want to only go 20 minutes away to go to work versus going an hour and a half away to get to work. And on the Kennedy, who knows how long it'll take. So, that would be a preference.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up since it's time, but I love to see this full room, and you guys were amazing. I know this was a very big topic, and we have a lot of people here with a lot of experience, so I hope we stitched it all together for you, gave you some food for thought, and hope you will leave thinking of ways that you can, integrate other communities and things that you do, push some of these issues, and help mHUB and manufacturing change Chicago for the better. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you all.